Or would it be inappropriate for Matt to sit in the chair up there? Yeah. Hey, Brad, can you say something? Okay. I okay. Thanks. It's my favorite. I even watched it this week. Yeah, that's good. I can hear you, Paul.
How about me? But did you get me?
All right. Are we at 6:30? Should we give this a whirl?
We're ready to start filming if you're ready to call the meeting to order.
Yeah, let's try this. Let me know when we're filming.
We're ready when you are.
Great. All right. I'd like to call the July 9th Planning Commission meeting of the City of Columbus to order. Matt, will you take the roll?
Monday.
Virtually present.
Bassett. Here. Ryan.
Here.
Ifer.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Lewis is excused.
Great. We have a quorum.
Yes.
All right. Notice of open meeting. This meeting was appropriately noticed and posted according to state statute. Great. All right. Number 4 on our agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I do have one question regarding the agenda. Is that supposed to be for 8C? Is that of the 2050 comprehensive plan? No. Okay.
The roadmap 2050 and the comprehensive plan only goes out.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda this evening.
I'll second that motion.
All right. I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We have a working agenda. Great. Number 5, approve the minutes from the May 21st Plan Commission meeting. You'll find those minutes in your packet. If somebody would review and make a motion to approve or amend.
I'll make a motion to approve the Plan Commission regular meeting minutes from May 21st, 2020.
I'll second.
Great. I have a motion and a second. All those signify in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Minutes are approved.
I know you can't see this, Chair Monday, but there's nobody present in the chambers to speak tonight.
Okay. And nobody else called in?
No.
All right.
Let me double check to make sure I'm not waiting for somebody else to be on. But I didn't see anybody waiting to get into the meeting.
Okay. And no comments to read for the record that you received?
No.
All right. So that takes care of number 6 on the agenda. Moving on to number 7, unfinished business.
There is none. Some of this probably is, but whatever. There's nothing for tonight. You right? Oh. Uh-oh. What happened to you, Ryan?
And bring them to June, and then we didn't have June, so here we are in July. We're ready to talk about any comments anybody had about this. Matt, is there any other introduction you need to make on this?
We lost you there for a second, so.
Okay.
Why, would you mind, I guess, recapping, or do you want me to recap it a little bit?
I was just saying, when we met in May, we reviewed this briefly. Everybody was sent home to put together their own comments
Mm-hmm.
and bring them to the June meeting. We didn't have the June meeting, but here we are in July, and it sounded like we were going to pick up where we left off, and that is have people present their comments.
Yeah, and just to note, I have not received any comments to date. And why don't I kind of reset it a little bit, because we do have new members to Plan Commission. I probably should turn my mic on so they can hear me on TV. Since I've been appointed zoning administrator and been here as the director of planning and development, when I review our codes, one of the things that I always thought, or that I always noticed was, if it was a conditional use permit, we clearly identify what we expect as far as site plans, building plans, grading, stormwater plans, lighting plans, landscaping plans, like kind of the general, when you get a submission of plans, kind of like the standard plans. Well, we didn't really have it laid out for for anything that was a permitted use. So technically, if it was permitted by code, and we requested these things, technically, by the way our ordinance was written, they didn't have to submit them. And it's like, well, that's kind of foolish, because in a lot of cases, we do need these things to review it and make sure it's built properly. So, City Attorney Johnson basically took the time to draft this draft ordinance, which would be housed under Chapter 78, which is planning, the planning chapter of our municipal code. At first, I was like, well, why wouldn't this be under zoning? But there's a lot of site plan review that we do for subdivisions, and there's a lot of things that apply to other chapters of our code. So after we debated it at DT, we're like, okay, 78 makes sense. So that's where we came to Plan Commission basically for some review before it would ultimately go and be adopted into our ordinance by our council. So that's where we're at. Actually, this went to Plan Commission, I think, in February as well, and then COVID broke out and we didn't meet for a while. And then we did it again, and then we had some turnover on our Plan Commission, so then it's it's been reset twice now. So that's where we're at tonight to review this draft ordinance. So with that, any questions?
Okay, no questions for Matt?
None.
Did you have any comments, Uriah?
I did have a few. So often, most of the content I think is real good. It's pretty thorough. Not all site plans would usually need everything on here, but that's kind of the purpose of having the sort of initial submittal meeting, right? That I see in parentheses 2, authority, right? The initial submittal.
Yeah.
There's some language in here that delegates to you and others, and that's one of my comments, but I'll get to that. It delegates to you and others what out of this list you are going to require, right? It's a little bit loose in that sense, and gives the city the authority to require some or all of these things, right? So in that sense, having a fairly exhaustive list is good. There's usually an applicability section in this type of ordinance. Did you or Attorney Johnson discuss that, either having one or why we didn't have one?
I can't think of the discussion that Paul and I have had about that topic. So no. If we did, it was probably 6 months ago, and he probably explained it, and I probably forgot. So
Okay.
I will ask Paul.
Okay. I've got some suggestions for that, because in the first paragraph under purpose, right, it says in certain circumstances, which is true, you know, and a purpose statement is usually why you have it. But then there's usually a section that says, well, here are the situations where it's applicable, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things that I jotted down was a building project of any size, with the exception of 1 or 2 family residential structures or accessory to residential structures, right? So if somebody's building a single home or a duplex, they wouldn't need to come in.
Are you froze? I don't know. I asked him like he's gonna. I think he froze again. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. All right. So we lost you for a second.
Oh man, you missed all my great rambling.
I sorry, but yes, we did.
Well, I guess in short, I would feel more comfortable if there were some specific applicability triggers on here, because it's a chicken or the egg problem otherwise, right? If somebody is rezoning or planning on doing a permitted use, it's not clear that they must come in and talk to you. It's not clear under what circumstance they must come in and talk to you. If it, right? Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I will, if it's okay with other members, I can just email these ideas to Matt.
Okay.
It seems like I'm having some problems with connectivity here in just reading all my comments.
Okay. That would probably be the easiest way to address this, because basically tonight what I'm looking to do is get to a point where we have a final draft. I would like to at least show it to the cow at one meeting so council knows what will be coming to them. And then at our August meeting, we would have the public hearing for the zoning text amendment actually that might not be plan commission because it's chapter 78. I would have to talk to Paul about who would host the public hearing, because there would have to be I think there would have to be a public hearing for this. So then it could go back to council, and then council could approve it, because typically the public hearing doesn't happen at the council level, typically. So, or for things coming from plan commission, I should say. So.
Right. So, all right. I'll give a little overview of just sort of the sections. I won't give specific comments, but under the authority section, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen there. That any one or all of those can direct an applicant to provide a site plan as part of its initial submittal. So if we have an applicability code or section that says what type of things need to apply. Did you guys lose me again?
No.
Okay. If we have an applicability section, then we don't need all the cooks in the kitchen. It can just be the code saying what type of projects need to come forward with this, and then talk to the zoning administrator. I have a few items under contents. Some of them are just clarifying language, and then I have a few items that they're under landscaping, but they're really more related to traffic and parking, so I'd suggest pulling a few of those bullet points out and making a new lettered section entitled grading and parking, or traffic and parking, sorry.
Okay.
So that's the flavor of my comments.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to note before I forget was that sections 7853 with this is actually being removed. There's a little bit of discrepancy, because in our code under 7853 is our fee schedule. And basically, since 2013, we've adopted a fee schedule by resolution. And yet, when they did that, they never went through and deleted that from our code. So there's been times where we've talked with people and they're like, well, I thought the fee was this. And they're like, and then we discovered, oh, there's this discrepancy between what the fee schedule is supposed to be and what it was adopted, 10 years ago in this section. So, and the thought process would be then every year or every other year, whatever schedule it would be, the council would update and amend the fee schedule and approve the fee schedule via resolution rather than having it in our chapter 78 of our code and it's buried somewhere where people don't realize, this is out there. So that I just wanted to be clear that when, just in case somebody was wondering why 7853 is being deleted, that is why, because we already have a fee schedule. It's just, this is redundant and it's not correct information that's in there. So just FYI.
Can I redirect to the authority portion? I can appreciate the fact that there's too many cooks in the kitchen per se, but it seems as though if it's maybe it should be like working in harmony with two of those items, whether it be a zone administrator and a building inspector, but two, so there's a series of, sort of like a checks and balances. Does it seem like we witnessed a couple of errors that were happened on building inspector side, and rather than just leaving it all on one person's plate, might work in harmony together, make sure that
He froze again. All right, I think the problem starts when I start screen sharing, so I'm going to stop doing that. Uriah.
You still have me.
Yeah, I'm going to stop screen sharing because I feel like every time we do that, that's where we lose.
Yep, and I turned off my video too, as you can see. It sometimes that sucks up bandwidth. So, Paul, you were just starting to say I can appreciate there's about too many cooks in the kitchen, and then I lost you.
Yeah, I can appreciate too many cooks in the kitchen, but I think maybe if these are all individual parties in here, like zone administrator and or the building inspector, for example, perhaps two of them should work in concert together. So, so it's not on just one person's plate, because it seems like there's potential for errors and, and just there's really no checks and balances. That's just my only suggestion.
Well, I think the advantage of having a single point of contact is that one person from the city is instructing a applicant or potential applicant, and the applicant is not hearing things from two or more different people. Now, that's not to limit the zoning administrator from tapping into other staffers or other people on this list for their opinion and also for their review when something comes in, but it prevents the issue of an applicant hearing different things at different times from different people, all of whom have the authority to command it.
I get that. I guess I'm just saying, if the information that is being provided by Planning Commission, for example, is not 100% accurate, then they're not being led down a straight path. And, I'm saying sort of like a verification process. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah, just looking at that authority section, I mean, more often than not, it's going to be coming from the zoning administrator, which myself, or the city engineer, who I don't even see listed. Generally speaking, they would be talking, especially for like the larger commercial properties, they're going to be talking to myself and or Jason first, and most likely they're going to be talking to us at DT, our development team, which meets biweekly. So if we're going to limit the amount of people, we might want to include the city engineer, because he's probably going to have just as big of a role as me, especially once we get into like the stormwater requirements and the grading plans and things of that nature. But if we're gonna, I mean, ultimately, anything that's a permitted use that I approve, you know, one of the things that we're gonna start incorporating is that zoning permit that we've reviewed here at this level before. And at a certain point, it's my intention to have like a monthly review. So plan commission's aware of things that I can sign off on at an administrative level. I would think most of the large construction projects, more of the large commercial projects would be coming to this board anyways. But I think adding some clarity to the process is something we've been trying to work through over the last 6 to 9 months. So
I think what he was earlier alluding to, maybe with the who needs to apply, is that those two things there kind of can work in unison, where to give it more clarity of the applicability, and then to whom thereafter. Is that what he was saying, that those two things could be? So depending upon the project, depending upon everything, that would depend on who you go to then for the authority? Would that be an easier way to sort of, am I making sense?
no, I'm sorry.
With what he wanted to, I'm sorry, what is his first name? The chair?
Uriah.
Uriah?
Yeah.
Okay, with what Uriah was saying with the applicability in the beginning, and sort of adding that and saying who needs to apply, does that make more sense? Because if it's a small project versus a large project, it's going to be maybe a different person or group to approve it? Does that?
Building type A versus building type B.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would make, I mean,
is that maybe a more
but he's
clear
right.
way
If it's a
to?
single family house, they're not most likely going to be disturbing land enough to the point where
Right.
they're going to need a full scale grading plan. And typically, usually once the subdivision is, right.
Did we lose him again?
Once the subdivision is platted, generally, you know, once they go through that, they do a full scale grading plan once they build the subdivision. So theoretically speaking, when they're building a lot, they shouldn't be disturbing that much land. I mean, it should all be, the building pad should all be fairly laid out for them, if it's done correctly. So, Uriah, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, we're having some, it's cutting in and out. So.
So
But,
maybe to add or ask about that is, and I'm not completely familiar with this, is if there are certain types of conditions, as Uriah alluded to, that they would say, if you have this condition, you have to talk to the building inspector. If you have this condition, you have to talk to this person. So if there is a very minor request like a shed, it's clearly identified who they have to talk to.
Yeah.
And if it is a larger, complicated project, you would say you need to have approval from these 3 people, and or coordination from the from you. Matt. So maybe that would be clearer or helpful. I like the conditional part that Uriah had listed.
I can understand what you're getting at, but shouldn't most of this be covered in the job description of the person or commission or that involved?
I think it's just getting standards of the review needed, depending on what the project is.
I think you're right, Ed, about it would be in the job description of the person, but this would be in the permit area where they would know where to go, they would know who they need to contact. So it's the other end of that.
Okay, maybe I'm going back at.
Yeah,
back
so
at
the
it
other
backwards.
side is if
Yeah.
you're looking at this from a permit, say, I
Okay.
need this permit, these are the people I have to talk to, it'd be clearly listed on the permit, these are the people I need approval from, or don't. Yeah.
Right. It gives clarity to the applicant,
Exactly.
right? It's sort of, from a process process standpoint, I would envision, look, an applicant wants to build a commercial building on parcel X, right? He doesn't have to go through a land division because the parcel is already there, but he needs this site plan approval. Brings it into, let's just say, the zoning administrator, you know, the person that's named as the authority, okay? Brings it into the zoning administrator, then we check the applicability. Oh, yes, it's a commercial building and you're gonna need parking, stormwater, and a site plan and some landscaping, okay? Then, upon application, the zoning administrator goes through the list of the contents of the site plan, indicates to the applicant, you need to meet everything in section A, everything in section B. You know, there might be a few things that just don't apply. That would be at the discretion of the zoning administrator. You know, and you can mark it off as, you know, this requirement is waived or whatever, and then the applicant can get that full application together, bring it back and submit it. Okay, so then you've got the site plan submittal. Then either the zoning administrator can review it themselves, distribute or delegate parts or all of it to other staff, city engineer, building inspector, whoever, but then there's still a single point of contact with the outside for the applicant so that they're not running through a bunch of different channels and they're not getting mixed messages. That's really important when having a development process go smoothly. And so that's the advantage of that, and you don't lose out by not having those sort of experts behind the scene, right?
Mhm.
If the zoning administrator is not an expert in stormwater, we're not asking him or her to review the stormwater plan.
Yeah.
Right, all we're asking the zoning administrator to do is to handle that communication through a single point of contact.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, that's my rationale.
So I guess what I'm looking for tonight is, I guess, a consensus that I can incorporate any comments I receive, bring it to council for their, I guess, review so they know what's coming, and then put this on the, well, I'll confirm with Paul that the proper procedure will be have a public hearing for this on the August 13th meeting. And then from there, once it's approved, it would go to council at the next council meeting date, which would be the 18th, I think, of August. That's what I'm proposing. So then, but the earliest it could be approved would be the 18th of August.
So who would be that single point of contact for the applicant?
It'd be me. I mean,
Okay.
for pretty much these things, I have been and I've continued to be. So
This is very similar to the way that it goes so you'll reach out to whoever you need to get whatever information you need.
Correct,
And
yeah.
then guide
And
that back
usu-
to the applicant.
and it usually goes the development team. So
Okay.
you know, we bring it there and discuss it, and Dion does not participate in the development team, but I mean, if I see him almost daily, so if it's something I need to ask him, that's not really that big of an issue.
Okay.
I know where to find him. So, jeez.
So Matt, I think I heard your aim is for us to put forward a motion to authorize you to incorporate any comments that you receive from commission members.
Yeah, I don't think the way I worded it on the agenda says review and discussion. I guess I'm looking more for a consensus that I can take in the comments and bring it to council and then bring it back to the next one for a public hearing and then official action or an official recommendation to council after the public hearing.
think that's,
I mean, I don't think it hurts if we want to make a motion, but I don't think we need to.
okay. I'm not quite sure how to word a motion for that kind of thing, but, so I guess we'll just say, commissioners, please submit any comments you have to Matt,
Yeah.
so he can incorporate them into a final version.
Okay.
Since we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, I don't have my Robert's Rules of Order book in front of me, but I'm thinking I should probably delegate the chair here to somebody present in the room. I'll still stay on and attend, but
Um,
I'm looking for a volunteer. No.
we're fine.
Katie.
I can chair.
I was gonna say, you get
I
to
don't,
do-
I mean, this is my first plan commission meeting, but I can
Yeah,
call
but
on people.
You
and-
get the
and
chair
ask
the.
Matt questions, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we want to do this officially? Do we want to nominate and vote?
I don't think you need to go to that length. I mean, at this point,
Oh, jeez.
all right. Yeah, let's just transfer the chair for the remainder of the meeting to Plan Commissioner Ryan.
Sounds good. I'll still attend, but I'm going to mute
Okay.
my mic and stay
Okay.
aside.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, I will start going through 8B.
Okay, yep.
So,
any business?
before you tonight, I have a ordinance that came up recently. So I don't know if you guys have been by Water and Light recently, but they put a solar cells out in front of their building, and we had quite the discussion trying to figure out, well, how does this classify under our zoning code? And after some discussion with our attorney, we determined right now that they are fine and it's permitted by code to put it where they wanted to put it. And so I approved it as zoning administrator, but it was one of those things where going forward, we recognize that this has the potential to impact the city, and thought maybe we wanted to get out in front of it so we don't have the internal debate if we actually get another application for one of these. So our city attorney worked on a similar ordinance, I believe, for the village of Cross Plains, or city Cross Plains, Cross Plains. And that's what I have proposed tonight. And I'm thinking it would be somewhat similar to what I'm proposing with the site plan ordinance, is that basically, with your blessing, I can bring this to council for their initial review and then bring it back and have it officially adopted. So I've given it a review. It seems to make sense. There doesn't really seem to be anything that I'm concerned about. Generally, I think having the renewable energy is a good thing. So we don't want to, I don't think it's something that we should prevent, but we should make sure it happens the way we want it to happen. So with that, I guess, any comments on this?
My only thing that I was thinking on this was if this is put into a business, they put up a solar set, panels, a lot of them, a few of them, whatever, the business goes under, bankrupt, do these solar panels still operate and feed into the existing power sources from the city or the state or the county or anything like
Well,
that?
I mean, so
Feedback from
somebody
the
would
solar
still own the
system?
real estate, so somebody would still technically own the power that's being generated. It all depends on who makes that investment and what agreement they have. Because if you're leasing a building and you put solar cells up, I mean, I would think that I would hope that the landlord has some sort of agreement. But I mean, I would think that under that case, if there's not any agreement, it'd probably just revert back to the landowner as the person that owns the cells. So,
But I was just thinking outside the box, but there's things that happen that are beyond recognition when you first make the rules and regulations. And I was just thinking that if there was some way to propel the potency or the flow of the power into the system like it was designed for in the first place. Instead of just going to the business, it would go back to the public power. Dedicate the system. I'm done.
I don't know how, I don't know if we would be able to dictate that by our zoning code or not.
I think that,
Brad?
I think that would go to Matt's comment about somebody would own that, and if it functioned, they'd be responsible. If it stopped functioning, they'd be responsible, because there could be a defect with it. So I think it would go with whoever owns it at that time. If it gets moved over to a bank, just like a regular house, you'd have to secure the property, against vandalism or whatever it is. Same thing with the solar panel system. If it's causing some issues, they'd be responsible. So if somebody owns that property at some point, I think it would fall back to them in the case that you had mentioned.
Okay. Any other comments?
And the thing is all of these are going to be conditional uses, so it would require a lot of review by the plan commission and ultimately approval by council. It's not like the ordinance as proposed would be. It would create some review. And it wouldn't be something that I could approve administratively, thankfully. So,
I like that it clarifies a few points about the shrubbery and the runoff, so it at least clarifies a few things.
yeah.
I don't know what the original discussion was with Power and Light as far as their concern, but I like that this does address a few of the issues. I don't know if it addresses everything in the possibility, but
Yeah.
it seems like it covers the main ones.
The real discussion was well, how are we classifying this? Is this an accessory structure? Is this it was when you look at our code, it was trying to figure out where you're going to fit the square peg in the round hole. Cause
Is it a building or is it a fence?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately we determined it was an accessory structure. Or no, actually we didn't. From what Paul's review was, it's just I can't remember exactly how we termed it, but after we deemed it wasn't really an accessory structure, then we're like, well, then certain elements of the code obviously didn't apply to it. So it was, as I said, it was an interesting discussion because it was something I don't think anybody really thought of before we actually had that application from Water and Light. And it was like, all right, well then what are we going to do the next time we get one? Because so that's why Paul said, well, I did this in Cross Plains. I'll get you something here shortly. So
Yeah.
that's how that happened. You still there, Uriah? Okay. This is another one where we technically don't need a motion or anything to approve it. It's just, it gives me direction on which way to go. This one will definitely need a public hearing here and approval here. As I said, I'll confirm about chapter 78.
Okay. Are we okay then to move on to 8C?
Yep.
All right. Which is review and approve the draft Chapter 1 background and demographics of the 2040 comprehensive plan. And got a lot of info in our packet.
Yeah. So just as kind of a background, also to the new members. So the comprehensive plan's been discussed at the Plan Commission for a while now. It's kind of run at the same time as the roadmap process. So this is the smart growth plan that's required by state statute. And every 10 years, we're required to update it. And there's certain elements that were required by law to address. And you'll kind of see as we go through the plan what the elements, the chapters end up being the elements. We've reviewed a lot of the chapters, so there's a draft chapter that I have. So what I'm looking to do now over the course of the next 3 months is to start bringing bigger chunks of the chapters to the group for discussion and final review. Put it out on the put it out on the website so people are in the community can review it and comment on it. A lot of this ends up being a lot of factual stuff. So, I mean, I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of comment on the content, but there's probably going to be a lot of comments on like, well, I don't think that should be a goal or objective for the city. So that's really where there's going to be a lot of comment over the next couple months. So what I have tonight is essentially a final, and I'm not really sure, a final layout that I have. So before, when I brought this to Plan Commission, it wasn't totally refined. Now I have the formatting in place where, the table numbers all are going to go sequentially. The page numbers are all set up, and the formatting is all set up to go. So, and I'm having issues seeing the packet.
Did we lose the Zoom feed entirely, or?
Uriah, are you still with us?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what is good. All right, there it is. I don't know why I was having issues. So, what my proposal is that as I go through these and as they're essentially reviewed by Plan Commission to the point where they can go out for public review, that's what I'm looking for when I bring it to this board. So tonight, my hope is after this meeting, that might be a few. I'm sure there's a few typos or a few edits that need to be made. But once you've reviewed it, you basically give me the ability to put it out on the website. And my plan will be to notify council that this is out there for them to review and that the public to review. That's how I intend to proceed through this. And I'm hoping my goal is by the end of September to have the final drafts out there for each chapter, and hopefully working towards sometime in early November approval. Also to note to the Plan Commission is that council approved a task order for some GIS work that we need to do mapping for this project. That's one of the things that I can write the plan in-house, but we don't have the GIS capabilities to do a lot of the maps that you need for a comprehensive plan. So thankfully, Rupert Milkie is able to help us at a very, with their GIS services. And a lot of it we already budget for, so it was something that can be addressed, I think, relatively easily by Rupert Milkie for us. So just going through, really, there's some background information here about the plan in the state statute, talking about the planning area will be obviously anything within our municipal limits, but we'll also talk a lot about the planning area as the extraterritorial zoning limits, which is 1.5 miles outside of our boundaries. I do note there that in this chapter there will be the map 1-1 will be the generic kind of base map that shows the city limits, but also the extraterritorial limits of our city. For the plan purposes. The history, this was a history that we have out on our website that I verified and borrowed and edited, took out some of the editorial comments that were kind of in there, and just people who want to know more of the history, there's more on the website, but there's also a lot over at the library that I've looked at, and there's like a 4-page or 4-binder thing of commentary about the history of our community. And we obviously have a long history in our community. Really, what I just kind of wanted to go through again tonight was the demographics with the Plan Commission and just kind of just kind of run through, really the first chapter always ends up being a ton of tables. And since this was reviewed last, new estimates came out from DOA. New estimates came out from American Community Survey for another year. So I had to go back and redo a lot of the tables this week because I was like, oh, it's not accurate. So I needed to make sure I presented the most up-to-date information. So one of the things you'll notice on the format is a lot of times we often look at our neighboring communities, and we also look at whatever county we're in these tables. It's just, I guess, a way to understand our place compared to some of the others and the growth. I highlighted us in red in the table, so Columbus stands out. It's easier to read, in my opinion. Also, with, I guess, the school colors being red, I just thought it made sense to use it. So, and starting on table 1.1, you can see what the current estimate is. That estimate is from DOA. Now, it's the 2019 estimate, but it was basically the end of 2018, so 1/1/2019. The interesting thing is, or at least I find interesting, when you look at the growth over this time period from 1980 to 2019, you see almost 28% growth. I know, it being that Fall River is just down the road from us, we're in the same area, right? And they've had a lot of growth. You look at 109% over that same time frame. But when you look at the raw numbers, we've had the same amount of growth. It's just they were smaller to begin with, so it just looks like, oh, they've had so much more growth, and as far as the population trends go. But and you can see the 27. We're basically on par with Wisconsin. A little above Dodge County, a little slower than Columbia County as far as growth of population. And the other thing to note, and we'll get into this later when we talk about the impact of 151, is really you don't see any growth from 80 to 90, and a lot of the growth happened after 1990, and then in early, I think it was 91, is when it went from 2-lane to 4 lanes from Columbus into Madison. So you've seen a lot of the growth over this time period basically happen once that happened. Going to, and a lot of the text explains this. So I'm just going to go through the table and show the table. I think it's just easier that way. So this is DOA's population projections. This will probably be updated in 2020. And to be honest with you, probably once some of those populations come out, I'll probably just have all the tables updated and update the text and have council reapprove it with the current data, and then we're on a schedule of updating the plan every time after we get the census, because then it's just a good, I guess, cycle to be on for updating the plan. You can see they project us to grow up to 60 to 90 by 2040, which is 26% growth, which coincidentally enough is basically the same percentage growth we were on for the previous 20, 30 years. I would say these projections are probably light with what is going on down the road in Sun Prairie. I think things could grow rather quickly. If all the land were made available today, I think growth would happen fairly quickly. And eventually there will be land that will come available. I think that's just, it's going to happen sooner or later, I would imagine. So I would think that those numbers are probably light, but, keep in mind we're in 2020, and I would guess that we're probably not to 5495. A large part because the first part of this decade, there was very little houses built after coming out of the housing bubble, economy tanking. There just wasn't many houses. But then in the back half, we saw some really strong growth. But in 19 and now into 20, we're running out of lots. So there's not a lot of growth because there's not a lot of places to build. But there's interest, it's just, there's not lots. So anyways, those are the projections. I mean, it's just a good thing to keep in mind when we're trying to think about the future, is this is what we're projected to grow. At any point, if you have any questions, jump in. So what I did was, if you've seen the roadmap plan, so they took some of I just gave them some of the data that I had for the, because it was already taken care of. So this is just a little handy line graph, just to kind of show and overlay what has happened against what's projected to happen in just two different colors. And yeah, as you see, it's very, very linear in nature. Another interesting table that to consider is the age makeup of our population, and this table only compares it to the state. But the interesting thing to note for me is when you look at the median age, which is the bottom row. We basically got 1 year younger while the state got older. So in a lot of the rural areas, especially in northern Wisconsin, they're going through an increased age of their rural population, and it makes it hard to provide a lot of services, healthcare, transportation, et cetera. We're not really experiencing that. We're seeing the opposite, which I think has a large impact to do with our proximity to Madison and some of the growth that's happening around here. So we're not seeing some of the issues that other people are facing. I think it's an interesting sign. The other thing, if you note, is if you look at the population over 65, that percentage is shrinking. So it's looking at how we're changing demographically with age. One thing I should also note that when I say 2018, when you read the bottom, it says American Community Survey 2014 to 2018. So it's always a 5-year snapshot. So the U.S. Census got rid of the long form on their census. So every year they give out a survey. So people in town are getting a survey every year that they're supposed to fill out. It's a random sample. So it's not everybody's getting it. It's going to maybe 10, 20, 30 households. And whatever sample is big enough to give them a statistically significant sample, but it's over a 5-year period, and it's a blended. So it really represents surveys they received from 2014 to 2018. So just FYI, so understand what that estimate means. The other big change along with the age I noticed was the educational attainment. So when you look at the city of Columbus, and you look at educational attainment for those 25 years or older, we went from 19.7% of our population 25 years or older in 2000 having a bachelor's degree or higher to 31.5% in 2018. And when you look at the jump from 2010 to 2018, it's fairly significant in the last 8 years, that number. And it's interesting because, when you look at compared to the county, compared to the state, we went from being below the state average to surpassing the state. And the county, we've always had a higher number of bachelor's degree or higher than the county. But I mean, it's just the growth between the last 8 years has just been something that was interesting. So I think that really that really ties into the age. I think you're seeing some more younger families move to town and a lot of the younger families have, college. It's probably more common now for people to have a bachelor's degree or higher than it was probably 20 years ago. But
younger people are moving into existing homes too. So
yeah,
pushing the population up and younger.
Yeah, but I thought that was really interesting in the review. So the other tables here, 1, 5, 1, 6, 1, 7, are kind of 3 different ways to measure income. First, you're talking per capita, so how much income per person, and then median household income and percent below the poverty level. So the incomes have generally went up over this time period. I mean, obviously, that's going to happen with inflation. The surprising thing to me was when I took out the 2017 community survey data and got the 2018 number, that number dipped for median household income. So we still technically lag behind the city and the county. And we've kind of held steady below below the state and the county, excuse me. And we've kind of held steady kind of below those numbers for, the last 20 years. So, it's, even though you'd think that some of those the gaps would have been narrowed, because a lot of times, people that have a higher education tend to make more, so you'd think that gap would have been closed, but that has not been the case. So, it's something, I guess, interesting, just a note and monitor. The one thing is the percent of people below the poverty level. Obviously, you can see the big gap or the big spike in 2010. That also coincides with when the economy was not very good with the housing bubble. Since then, it's came down, and we're now back below the state percentage. Slightly above the county, but that's another one where the 2017, 2018 numbers differed. So, and there, with the American Community Survey, there is a margin of error. So it's not like these numbers are perfect, but it's the best data we have to go off of. The last thing, and this is one that I could have probably put in the transportation section if I wanted, but I thought, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, the formation of our city was impacted by two big things. One was rail back in 1800s, and then once roads came through, 16 was a major thoroughfare early on, and then 151 became a driving force and is probably the big driving force today to our growth. So I thought it was important to take a look at 151 and where we're at on that corridor and the growth on that corridor. So I put, and just FYI, I did amend this to put figure 1.2, so it's consistent with the other one. I missed that when I originally sent the packet out, so I've made that change since. But this will give you in a nice timeline version. From what I could tell, the development of 151 and how we've kind of gotten to what we have now at the edge of our community. So you can see, they built a bypass around Sun Prairie in 59. They built a bypass around Waupun in 62. Beaver Dam, ours was built in 76. And then in 91, basically from Columbus to Sun Prairie, it went to 4 lanes. 93, it went to 4 lanes up to Beaver Dam, and then finally in 2004, they made it 4 lanes all the way to Fond du Lac from Waupun. So I think that's had a big impact on our community, as I noted before. But one of the things I wanted to do was look at the same population trends that we had. So this was, thankfully, DOA has these all in a spreadsheet, so I can just copy them down and get rid of the communities that aren't impacted. So basically what I have is in table 1.8 and 1.9 is every municipality from here to Fond du Lac. So that basically our long stretch on 151 that we're on. And basically looking at the population growth between 1980 and the 2019 estimate. So you can see in every municipality that's a city or village, I outlined with the thicker outline so you can see that, because some of the towns, that's where you see over this time period, a lot of the towns haven't grown. In fact, they've gotten smaller. Most of the growth's happened in the city, so which obviously isn't that surprising. But when you look at the total growth for the corridor as a whole, I mean, it's been 36%. And if you go back to table 1.2, I think the growth for the state was 22%. So we're in a corridor that's growing and growing rapidly. And really, the driver, when you look at it, is what's going on in Madison and what's going on in Sun Prairie. And, it kind of gets to, well, we're the next, the Fall River, Columbus area is the next area. So I think both communities are probably going to see a fair amount of growth over the next 20 years. Just trying to make sure we're prepared to capture that growth in a way that makes sense. The other thing, I did the same thing, but taking the DOA population projections and taking their spreadsheets and throwing it into a table that you can read, showing every city, village, and town that's basically along the 151 corridor, and you can see the growth that they have projected for the next 20 years, and you can see that they only project a 12% growth, and I think, if I remember correctly, going back, I think that's actually a little less than what they had projected for the state. Yeah, actually, it says 14.1% for the state. So even though we had the last 20, 30 years, we had a boom, we're probably going to stay about the same level of the state. Once again, it goes back to DOA projections. Depends on whether or not you believe them. I know they have a lot of smart mathematicians that put together their models and do it. So I'm not saying there's not merit to what they do. It's just
I believe that Sun Prairie grew a lot more rapidly than it was
Correct.
anticipated to.
A lot of their models were linear in nature, and I know when I used to work in northern Wisconsin, like a lot of the towns up there, and the counties up there, they didn't see the population growth that they actually experienced. So it's the best source that we have, it's just interesting to look to see what they're projecting, so we can kind of get a feel. But you're right. They were probably off in how much Sun Prairie was going to grow. The other thing that's at the end of the chapter is basically outlining goals, objectives, and policies, and defining what these are. So, and that's really the big discussion item for the next couple meetings is we'll be taking a look at some goals, objectives, and policies for each chapter that we have for whether it's utilities and community facilities or natural resources or economic development. There's going to be some items that come out of our meetings that dictate how we move in the future, and that was a large reason why when we did the citizen engagement team and did a lot of the public outreach, a lot of that data that I have that we've collected is also going to help dictate and guide what things are we think are goals that we should have for ourselves. And in honestly looking at the past comp plan, it's I don't think a lot of it actually looking at the past two comp plans, because the first one we adopted in 2003, then another one we adopted in 2009, but we've done a few amendments since then. When you look at the goals, they've stayed fairly similar, and really the issues that we're facing now are fairly similar to what we had 20 years ago. It's just trying to find a way to implement them and address them. I think some of them, to a certain extent, have been addressed. I know one of the big ones that we often heard was the schools, and the referendum passed, and that's so not saying that schools aren't all of a sudden will move down the totem pole. I mean, I think they'll still be very important, but it's trying to implement some of these things so we achieve some of the and address some of the issues that were identified. So is there any comments or suggested edits to this? Or if I put this on the website this week or next week, it's still a draft. It's still not adopted until it's adopted by council, but at a certain point it needs to go out for some review. So and I should have at the next meeting, I have a timeline that I've worked through with our new administrator, and I think that would probably be helpful. Probably should have included it in the packets tonight, but I didn't. So it's kind of a time frame of trying to get this thing adopted, because it's been discussed for a while, and hopefully with the roadmap being adopted here shortly, this will be adopted kind of right after it, and we'll have these two documents to hopefully guide us into the future and implement some nice changes to our community.
As far as any edits, I will certainly look at this later on and see if there's any that I see. But
Yeah.
as far as comments, I just want to say this is very, very informative. I actually learned a lot tonight, listening and looking at the way it was projected, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. It's, there's a lot of background data that goes into this, and you'll find when we get into the other chapters, that there's a lot of background data that you get, but it's from a lot of different sources, whether it's DNR or whether it's the county or whether it's, and as a planner, not everything that's in this, I'm not an expert on. I'm not an expert on wetlands or floodplain. Well, I'm getting to be an expert on floodplain, but, a lot of the natural resources or things that are out there, but I do know where to find the data and where to compile it and prepare it. So hopefully the plan as it's shown tonight, it looks good. The other thing I will note is for this chapter, it was hard to put in pictures. I probably could have put a couple in the intro or in the history. But as we go on, I want to put in a lot of pictures because a lot of times when you look at a community's comprehensive plan, it is the most boring document in the history of the world. And I feel like pictures help, tell the picture or tell the story. Yeah, well, but it
Especially
tells
in
the
the
story.
history section, I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea. You could find some, when they talk about the Whitney building or they talk about,
Yeah.
so I'm sure you could find something to kind of.
But I think it helps. And the other thing to keep in mind is one of the last things I'm going to write for this is once we have all our goals, objectives, and policies, I'm going to try to take a couple 100-page document and shrink it down to 10-page and call it the executive summary, which I think that's important because then when we have new plan commissioners, when we have new council members, when I can give them the 10-page version of the plan and they can look at it because they're probably not going to have the time to read a couple 100-page document. That's just the truth of the world we live in. So, to me, I think having a really good executive summary where you can put in all the goals, objectives, and policies of what we're trying to accomplish, when you can show them what the future land use map looks like, trying to dictate how we want to grow in the future. I think those things are what our decision makers need to have at their fingertips. So I talked a lot, so I need some more.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any other?
No, I just want to comment I think that's really well done. It looks great, a lot of good information that you can actually read. So yeah, and I like the way it's looked at in several different directions to kind of figure out what you're reading. So yeah, I think I really like it. I would recommend move it along. And also with the pictures too, because there are a lot of great things you can add with the pictures, whether it's new developments, this is a snapshot for time.
Yeah.
And you say, someone may look at this in 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, and you can say, well, this new building is new, or this old building is still here. This is what it looked like, in 2020. And those can be very informative way off into the future. So, even like the new, Highway 60 or 16 is, the trees are cut down, the concrete's new, that kind of stuff is a nice snapshot to show.
It's amazing when you look at even pictures a couple years old, how just the change with the new light poles, the flowers, the banners, like the new flags. Like it's like I saw. It's amazing how quickly things change with a new project like that. I mean, that's
even you mentioned is the banners is a nice snapshot in time. Hopefully, the only other time that people have to think about that, but that the reason the banners came up was because of what's going on right now. And that would be a nice snapshot to have there is here's what downtown looked like in 2020 when.
Talking about the senior banners as well.
Yeah, the senior banners, yeah.
I think also to echo, I'm sorry,
Brad.
name?
Brad.
Thank you, sorry. To echo Brad's sentiment, snapshot in time, I would personally love to see a snapshot of, let's say, 1975, when there was a 151 or, just like, how the city looked then, and then sort of like, now, and then, what it could be envisioned in the future, just, if we're talking like in the future, oh, the Whitney building was here, or this is new, I would love to know, what looked like back when, just.
The only snapshot that you can see here from City Hall when you look is, so in the second ward room, there's an aerial photo from 1966. And you can look and you can kind of see, all right, this is where the edge of town kind of was then. And you can see that there's no bypass in yet. And you can see how, where 151 came in, which is essentially where 73 comes in. And you can see where 16 goes out of town and kind of how it looks. And you can kind of tell how it changed a little bit. And then in my office, there's an aerial. Haven't quite pinpointed the year yet, but I'm guessing it's like somewhere in like the mid 90s. And you can see, all right, there's 2 lanes now to the bypass, but you can see some of the subdivisions haven't been built yet that have been built recently. So really, one of the things would be interesting of going to the county and seeing, I know county sometimes has old aerial photos. If you could go and kind of see when things were built. The other records that you could always see is what year subdivisions were platted. That often has a big change on how the landscape. So.
And as
Yeah,
far
I
as
think,
edits-
go ahead.
I'm sorry, as far as edits, in case if I don't remember when I'm doing this, it seemed like the footer, the page numbers, it should, rather than saying like 1 of 1, 1 of 2, 1 of 3, it should be like 2, I don't know, it just seems like that's really confusing to me, because it says like page 1 of 4, 1 of 5.
No, it's, okay, so there's obviously you can do it 2 ways. You could do it just 1 through whatever, and list it that way. So page 1-9, so it's page, so it's chapter 1, 9th page.
Okay,
So
I guess I was reading it as 1 of, okay.
No, that's it. So basically when you do it, so like you can kind of have both at the top of the page and the bottom of the page, you kind of know you're still in chapter 1. And just same obviously with the table 1-9, it's the 9th table in the first chapter.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, that's just the formatting.
All I have to say is that from my previous experience on the council a few years back, and seeing what you've got here as information presentation, it's one heck of an improvement than what we had to work with in the past. And I think you know what you've seen it because you looked through it.
Yeah.
And after 73 years, yes, this town has changed somewhat.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm hoping that in the next 20 years, we can find the land to do the right things with for the expansion proposal. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Uriah, did you have any comments?
I don't. I'll echo the sentiments of all the others.
No, thank you. Well, then, I guess with that, I shouldn't steal your thunder. It's yeah.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye, Uriah. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No, that's okay.